Windy City After Dark, we're talking inside politics with the former director of events of the Clinton White House and the author of Eat, Drink, and Succeed, Laura Schwartz. Laura! Glad to have you after dark.
Well, I feel like we should have martinis. There's one of them we covered. It is After Dark.
Well, you could have written a ton of different books with your experience in the White House, but why write Eat, Drink, and Succeed?
Well,
and there was a martini on the cover.
Very, with the ladder up the side as we climb our way to the top. But I have to say, I saw a lot of people at the White House, and they came and they ate and they drank, and they left with White House towels stuffed in their pockets.
I bet.
You wouldn't believe the women in their little Judith Lever purses could hardly get them closed. But then there were others. There were others that came and they ate and they drank and they turned ideas into reality and relationships into partnership. And the best story I have for that with President Clinton has got to be the 1994 state dinner of Boris Yeltsin. Now, state dinners are a great social affair, and it's the power place to be for that ticket. You've got philanthropists, scientists, and of course some celebrity. So the Clintons invited Steven Spielberg, a great donor, a great friend, and he comes in black tie and his wife Kate Capshaw in her dress. Well, here they are having cocktails. They start talking to these two other guys, one of which they knew. The other one they met that night, but they were all from Hollywood, and they talked a bunch. And then during dinner, they were at a different table, and over dancing in the grand foyer, they kind of continued the conversation in the corner. Well, those two other guys that Steven Spielberg was with that night just happened to be David Geffen and Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Wow.
And 13 days later, they announced DreamWorks. DreamWorks was an idea at a state dinner. Nowhere near a boardroom, nowhere near L.A. And it just shows us that we could be anywhere, whether at a burger joint like Oprah was with Roger Ebert when she decided to go to King World, when Mayor Cory Booker met Mark Zuckerberg at a dinner party in Sun Valley, Idaho. These are those moments of our life. You never know who's going to be on the bus next to you. You never know if you say, oh, I'm too busy for that happy hour. If you go even just for 20 minutes, those 20 minutes may change your life, or 20 minutes later you're back on the bus and going home. So we really have to look at every moment, not just during the day, but outside of that normal day.
Right, and those are some of the tips that you have in your book here, but what are like maybe some of the misconceptions about networking?
Well, that it has to be an elevator pitch. I really believe in the power of conversation, and that is knowing a little about a lot. Reading all the headlines, even the ones you have no interest in, because you may find yourself in a conversation, the subject comes up, and instead of having to step on the outside and wait for it to pass so you can join up again, you know enough to get by. I tell you, I wrote a book. I don't read that many books. I read a lot for work and a lot of papers, but I was at dinner parties, years ago when Twilight came out, and everybody of every age was talking about Twilight. Well, have you seen the size of Twilight? I went to the bookstore to get it, to read it, so I could start stepping in these conversations, and oh my gosh, I put it back on the shelf and I went home.
It's too intimidating.
But then I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to read this, but it's still going to come up at events. So I went to the New York Times Book Review, and instead of reading that whole book, I read 3 pages. It told me about the background, how the hands are in the shape of a heart on the cover, and the apple signifies, the Garden of Eden and Eve's decision, does he take out the bite of the apple or not? And so the next time I was out, the subject came up. I just interjected little bits. They're like, oh, tell me more. So I said, well, did you know that the author that came to her in a dream? Really? Yes. Can you imagine if we all remembered our dreams? It just is enough to get by till it comes back around. But, I really bared witness to somebody who can make great conversation and learned a lot from President Clinton.
What was the most important thing he taught you?
To be in the moment. I'll never forget my first solo event as the White House Director of Events. It was in the East Room, and all the guests were placed, and the press were ready. The United States Marine Corps Band were in the grand foyer, ready to play Ruffles and Flourishes and Hail to the Chief on my cue, and everybody's in place. We're ready to go, except no president.
Okay.
And then the president finally got there, and then we went through everything. But I have to tell you, that happened all the time, as we called it CST, Clinton Standard Time.
He always was late, huh?
Which was late.
Because you know what they call him.
No.
The first black president.
I thought that he was on CPT.
Thanks to Tony more. So here he is, always late. But once he got there, I ran through everything with him and the participants. But before I cued the Colonel and the Marine Band to start with the Ruffles and Flourishes, because once you cue that, there's no going back. I simply looked at the president and I said, "Sir, are you ready?" And he looked at me and he said, "Laura, it's showtime. And I thought, showtime? This is not a show. This is an event. I've worked very hard on this. But, you know, better to have him in a good mood than a bad mood.
Right.
So we went on. It was a great event. All is good and well. Later on that afternoon, he's going to have this small thing in the cabinet room with a couple people, but it was going to be televised. So I gave him the briefing in the Oval Office, and as we walked through his secretary's office to the side door to the cabinet room, just before I opened it up, no ruffles and flourishes this time, but I just said quietly, "Sir, are you ready?" And he said, "Laura, it's showtime." And I realized he wasn't saying that to be funny, and he was never late because he was just dilly-daddling. He was late because he was getting briefed on national security numbers, and then as soon as I start briefing him, a head of state is on the phone, and you've got to take that call and so forth. But by saying it's showtime was his way to get into focus so that he could communicate the message at hand for the next 20 minutes, that next hour. He just put the other things on his plate. He didn't forget about what was going on, but just to the side, because the president, like all of us, is a multitasker. And so,
yeah, but he likes to put on a show, too. I really do think he meant it's showtime.
Yes.
Well, and I got to tell you, he would talk, and Republicans and Democrats, independents, indifferent alike will tell you, when they were speaking with him, they felt like he was speaking to them, and that's because he was focused on communicating that message. And so, so I started doing that in my own life.
You say it's showtime right before you got on the segment. I think I heard you say it.
Can you hear me outside?
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
It's a great laughter.
Unfortunately, it's go time. We got to go. But Laura, thanks for being here. And yeah, President Clinton, one of the greatest speakers of all time. There's no argument on that.
That's true.
All right, we'll find out more about the book Eat, Drink, and Succeed at eatdrinkandsucceed.com. And thanks for watching Windy City After Dark. We'll see you at 11 a.m.